General Motors. That stock's up. Its profit in North America jumped 33%.
An old-school pickup truck is getting a new school makeover. Commercial truck maker Workhorse is unveiling its new plug-in hybrid pickup truck.
Pickup trucks have become so imposing over the years, and apparently this is a problem.
For years, pickup trucks were marketed as the crown jewels of American automotive culture. They weren't just vehicles. They were status symbols, financial investments, and tools of pride. Manufacturers like General Motors, Ford, and Ram convinced buyers that these machines were worth staggering sums, with price tags climbing past $80,000. Families signed on to monthly payments rivaling mortgages, and dealers carried themselves with the swagger of kings who knew demand would never fall. Trucks were pitched as both indestructible and indispensable, the beating heart of American roads. But today, the landscape has shifted dramatically. Those once prized trucks are no longer treasures. Their liabilities sitting idle on dealer lots. Discounts that manufacturers swore would never happen are suddenly everywhere. Shiny vehicles, once symbols of strength, now collect dust like unsold furniture in a clearance warehouse. And behind those empty smiles in the dealership showroom lies a harsh financial reality. Every unsold truck drains $50 in interest charges each day, turning inventory into anchors that drag entire businesses underwater. The collapse isn't just about falling prices. It's about a deeper unraveling of trust, of promises, and of the myths that automakers built their empires on. Buyers who once feared scarcity now smell desperation. Dealers who projected confidence now quietly admit that they would rather slash prices than carry another month of losses. And as families and contractors watch values collapse, they're left with one burning question. If trucks weren't really worth $80,000, what else in this industry has been a lie? This is not just a story about vehicles. It's a story about arrogance, overreach, and the brutal correction now unfolding in real time. To understand how we got here and what comes next, we need to trace the arc of how once untouchable pickups went from symbols of power to unsellable burdens. Real quick, if you're into videos that cut through the noise and break things down clearly, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find this. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. We've got more deep dives coming your way. Also, drop a comment and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your take. Now onto the video. Not long ago, dealers couldn't keep trucks on the lot. Buyers would line up, sometimes waiting months for delivery, while dealerships casually slapped on markups worth thousands of dollars. Scarcity was the sales pitch, and it worked. The shortage of semiconductors, supply chain disruptions, and pent-up demand during the pandemic years only reinforced the illusion that trucks were rare treasures worth every penny of inflated prices. Customers swallowed the cost, believing that they were securing something both valuable and durable. Fast forward to today, and those same lots that once resembled fortresses of scarcity now look more like graveyards of excess. Rows of shiny new trucks sit untouched, their engines never turned over, their tires collecting dust under the fluorescent lights of sprawling dealership yards. The market flipped, and it flipped fast. What was once a seller's market has become a buyer's battlefield. The very inventory dealers bragged about now bleeds them dry, with every unsold vehicle racking up financing costs that accumulate like clockwork. For dealerships, the pain is tangible. Floor plan financing, the system by which dealers borrow money to hold inventory, has turned into a crushing weight. A single unsold truck can cost a dealer $50 per day in interest payments. Multiply that by hundreds of units and months of stagnation, and you begin to understand the desperation behind sudden price drops, rebates, and once unthinkable discounts. These are not promotions of generosity, they are survival tactics. The psychology of the buyer has also shifted. Where customers once walked onto lots, fearing they'd miss their chance at a truck, today they enter with leverage. They know the longer a truck sits unsold, the more it hurts the dealer, and that knowledge has flipped the power dynamic. Trade-in bonuses, creative financing gimmicks, and hidden rebates now materialize overnight, like magic tricks pulled from desperation. What the industry is experiencing is more than just a dip in demand. It is a correction of arrogance, a collapse of the inflated myth that trucks were always worth more, that customers would forever pay a premium, and that scarcity was permanent. Now scarcity has given way to surplus, and the fortress of confidence has crumbled into a field of idle, depreciating machines. If the collapse of traditional trucks exposed the fragility of old business models, the failures of electric pickups revealed the dangers of overpromising the future. Automakers told buyers that electric trucks would be the bold leap forward, a combination of strength, innovations, and environmental responsibility that would carry the industry into a new age. Companies like Ford and GM paraded their flagship EV trucks across stages, calling them revolutionary. Executives promised torque like never before, seamless charging networks, and ranges that would put gas-powered engines to shame. Waiting lists were hyped as proof of unstoppable demand, but reality was harsher. Families who signed up to be early adopters quickly discovered they had become guinea pigs in a corporate experiment. Hook a trailer to one of these so-called future trucks, and the range collapsed to nearly half of what was advertised. Cold weather reduced performance to a fraction, leaving drivers stranded or tethered to charging stations far from home. On long road trips, range anxiety became the defining experience. The promise of convenience replaced by constant calculations of whether the truck could even make it to the next stop. The disillusionment was swift. Charging infrastructure, already thin in many regions, proved incapable of supporting widespread adoption. Repairs for EV trucks often dragged on for weeks because parts were scarce and service departments were unprepared for the complexity of electric drivetrains. Resale values plummeted as buyers realized that their high-priced science experiments had little demand on the used market. Dealerships, who had aggressively ordered these models under corporate pressure, found themselves stuck with rows of unsold electric trucks. Each vehicle burned through financing costs, just like their gas-powered siblings, but with an added stigma. Nobody wanted them. Owners like Sarah in Michigan summed up the frustration bluntly: "We were used as guinea pigs." This wasn't just a technological disappointment. It was a cultural one. Trucks, long marketed as dependable workhorses, had been recast as fragile ornaments. The very vehicles that were supposed to redefine the future instead deepened mistrust in automakers. The EV dream did not just fail to deliver, it actively damaged the credibility of the industry, leaving behind skepticism that may haunt every next big thing pitched to customers. The collapse of the electric pickup fantasy was more than a bump in the road. It was a blow to the industry's most ambitious gamble, exposing just how far corporate promises were from the lived reality of families and workers who depended on trucks every day. If the collapse of mainstream trucks was a shock, the implosion of luxury flagships was a humiliation. Automakers built six-figure halo vehicles, models like the GMC Hummer EV and the Cadillac Escalade IQ, to project power, prestige, and technological dominance. They were marketed as statements, machines meant to rival European exotics, while proving American ingenuity could thrive in the luxury tier. For a moment, the hype worked. Reservation lists filled, headlines celebrated, and dealers expected bidding wars. But when these vehicles finally reached real buyers, the illusion unraveled quickly. The Hummer EV weighed more than some dump trucks, tipping the scales at over 9,000 pounds. Tires wore down alarmingly fast, each replacement costing hundreds of dollars. Real-world range, especially under load, fell far short of glossy brochures, often closer to 150 miles when towing or hauling. Escalade IQs, meanwhile, carried astronomical price tags, but offered little beyond bulk and gimmickry. The wealthy buyers these models targeted didn't need to tolerate inconvenience. When prestige failed to align with practicality, they simply walked away. Dealerships were left with hulking monuments to arrogance, vehicles sitting untouched for more than 100 days at a time. Each day bled financing costs, each month turned projected profits into red ink. Behind closed doors, managers admitted they would rather move the units at steep losses than keep bleeding money. The humiliation extended beyond sales figures. What was supposed to be the pride of the brand became its shame, a visual reminder of how overreach backfires. Dealers who once bragged about exclusivity were now desperate to unload unsellable stock. The resale market only deepened the embarrassment. Owners who did buy in found values plummeting almost immediately, leaving them with vehicles worth tens of thousands less than they had paid. Luxury was supposed to elevate the brand. Instead, it tarnished it. The six-figure halo trucks, marketed as the future of American prestige, became symbols of excess and failure. The irony was unmistakable. Vehicles designed to scream status ended up broadcasting desperation. Perhaps the deepest betrayal wasn't in luxury excess or futuristic gambles. It was in the collapse of the Workhorse itself, the dependable trucks that farmers, contractors, and fleets had relied on for decades. For generations, heavy-duty diesel pickups were synonymous with toughness. They hauled loads across states, endured punishing work sites, and anchored family livelihoods. Owners trusted them like extensions of themselves. That trust is now shattered. Modern emission systems, added to meet regulations, transformed once simple engines into fragile puzzles. A single failed sensor could throw a truck into limp mode. Injectors failed at 30,000 miles, repairs climbed into the thousands, and warranties often ran out before the worst problems appeared. Fleet managers in the Midwest reported entire rows of diesel trucks sitting idle, costing contracts, income, and credibility. The betrayal wasn't limited to diesels. Gasoline engines suffered from their own engineered fragility. Cylinder deactivation, a feature meant to save fuel by shutting down half the cylinders during light driving, turned into a ticking time bomb. In GM trucks, lifters collapsed, dragging camshafts down with them, sometimes before 60,000 miles. Repairs ranged from $4,000 to $6,000, a crushing blow for families already paying $1,000 plus monthly truck payments. The frustration was compounded by automakers' silence. Evidence suggests manufacturers knew these issues existed for years. Complaints piled up, service bulletins were vague, and responsibility was deflected back onto drivers. By burying the problem instead of fixing it, companies turned mechanical flaws into betrayals of trust. The fallout spread far beyond mechanics. Trucks were no longer synonymous with toughness. They were liabilities. Families and businesses that depended on them found themselves stranded, financially drained, and increasingly bitter. The cultural foundation of the truck, reliability above all else, cracked wide open. When the Workhorse fails, the collapse isn't just technical, it's cultural. It strikes at the very heart of why people buy trucks. And when that bond breaks, it's not easy to repair. With diesels and gas engines faltering, automakers pitched hybrids as the best of both worlds. They promised buyers reliability from gasoline engines paired with efficiency from electric components, creating trucks that would supposedly save money while still delivering power. On paper, it sounded like progress. In reality, it became yet another expensive experiment carried out on unsuspecting families. Take Ford's PowerBoost hybrid. Owners discovered that failures in the cooling system and electrical controls led to breakdowns ordinary mechanics couldn't diagnose. Repairs stretched into weeks, with bills running into the thousands. Toyota, long celebrated for reliability, stumbled badly with its twin-turbo hybrid setups. Timing chain issues, overheating turbos, and limp mode malfunctions left customers disillusioned. For families expecting 300,000 miles of Toyota durability, these breakdowns were devastating. The insult was in the timing. Many of these failures struck just after warranties expired, leaving families without coverage and saddled with repair bills that felt deliberately timed to land when protection ran out. Buyers began to feel like the victims of a calculated squeeze, not accidents of engineering. What was marketed as progress revealed itself as fragility packaged in a shiny brochure. Even downsizing failed to offer relief. The mid-size truck market, once seen as the practical escape from oversized complexity, turned into another trap. Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon owners complained of transmission shudders and rear differential failures. Ford's Ranger brought back turbo and transmission problems that should have been solved years earlier. Even Nissan's Frontier, pitched as the simpler truck, suffered from crude gearboxes and reliability issues. The so-called mid-size Mirage delivered smaller trucks with nearly the same sticker prices as full-size models and the same reliability nightmares, just in a tighter package. Buyers who thought they were being smart by going smaller discovered they had been lured into another financial dead end. The broader truth was unavoidable. Whether full-size, diesel, hybrid, or mid-size, the fundamental problems ran deeper than any single segment. Automakers were no longer delivering reliability, they were experimenting on their customers, and the costs were piling up. Beyond breakdowns and price collapses lies a betrayal of a different kind: abandonment. Imagine saving for years to buy a truck, only to discover the manufacturer has quietly pulled the plug on the model you chose. That was the fate of Nissan Titan owners. Once pitched as a bold contender in the full-size truck wars, the Titan was quietly sentenced to death after years of weak sales. Dealers now sit on orphaned inventory, trucks that depreciate faster than almost anything else on their lots. For buyers, the consequences are severe. Parts availability dwindles, resale values sink, and confidence evaporates. Owning a discontinued model isn't just inconvenient, it feels like a punishment. Phaeton owners aren't just driving trucks, they're carrying reminders that the brand itself walked away. Ram attempted a different tactic with the Classic line, an older platform sold alongside newer models. Instead of offering value, the Classic turned into a relic. Outdated interiors, rough rides, and persistent lifter problems made it a poor alternative. Buyers who thought they were getting a bargain realized they were paying modern prices for yesterday's engineering. Other experiments fared no better. Hyundai's Santa Cruz, a crossover pickup hybrid, tried to blend comfort and utility, but satisfied neither audience. Transmission problems, a bed too small for real work, and confused marketing left it stranded between categories. Instead of expanding the market, it highlighted how risky half measures can be. These orphaned and abandoned trucks are more than sales flops. They are symbols of an industry that promises loyalty, but rarely returns it. Buyers who committed to brands now feel stranded, left with depreciating machines no one wants to trade in or buy used. The emotional sting cuts deep. Purchasing a truck has long been about stability, longevity, and pride. When that investment is rendered obsolete not by time but by corporate decisions, trust erodes. The damage isn't just financial, it's cultural. A truck that nobody wants becomes a burden, not a badge. And the companies that abandon their models may have abandoned something even bigger. The trust of their most loyal customers. The fallout of this collapse isn't confined to showroom floors. It hits families, dealers, and entire communities. For households, the financial suffocation is brutal. Monthly payments for new trucks now exceed $1,200, often more than housing costs. Pair that with sudden repair bills, $4,000 for injectors, $6,000 for camshaft repairs, or thousands more for hybrid battery failures. And the dream of ownership feels less like freedom and more like a financial trap. Families who once saw buying a new truck as a milestone of success now see it as a weight dragging them down. Contractors miss jobs when their trucks break. Families cancel trips to cover repairs, and ordinary buyers who stretch their budgets feel betrayed. Many are holding on to older models longer, maintaining trucks from the early 2000s rather than gambling on fragile new ones. Reliability has become more valuable than novelty. Dealers, meanwhile, are drowning in debt. Behind the polished glass and friendly smiles lies quiet panic. Every truck that sits unsold devours $50 a day in interest. Multiply that across dozens of units and months of stagnation, and you have dealers fighting to stay afloat. Managers instruct sales teams to move the oldest trucks first, even at steep losses. Discounts appear where markups once ruled. Trade-in values are slashed, and hidden fees are stuffed into contracts as survival tactics. The pressure doesn't stop at the dealership. Corporate offices monitor sales numbers relentlessly, punishing stores that fail to meet quotas even when the market has collapsed. Dealers are squeezed between corporate demands and customer hesitation. For many, it feels like a no-win scenario. The impact ripples further into communities. Cancelled projects and shrinking sales mean fewer jobs at suppliers and shorter shifts in factories. Towns that once thrived on auto industry, paychecks now watch incomes shrink and storefronts close. The cultural weight of the truck, once a source of pride and livelihood, has become a source of anxiety. This isn't just a business correction, it's a social one. Families, dealers, and communities are all paying the price for years of corporate overconfidence. And the damage doesn't end there, because the political and global landscape is now shifting beneath their feet. The truck market collapse doesn't exist in a vacuum. Politics, labor movements, and global competition are all accelerating the crisis. For years, US government policy was sold as a stabilizing force, with subsidies and tax credits encouraging EV adoption and tariffs protecting domestic manufacturing. In reality, the rules shifted so frequently that buyers and automakers alike were left in chaos. One year, families counted on a $7,500 tax credit for electric trucks. The next, they discovered they were excluded because of where the truck was built or what battery it used. These sudden changes made planning nearly impossible. Buyers hesitated, unsure if they would qualify for credits. Dealers struggled to advertise clear prices. Automakers cancelled or delayed projects because costs could change overnight. Instead of stability, policy delivered confusion. Tariffs added another layer of instability. Imported parts faced sudden cost hikes, while subsidies in certain states attempted to offset the damage unevenly. For families, this meant unpredictable pricing. For the manufacturers, it meant recalculating supply chains midstream. And for dealers, it meant explaining to frustrated customers why the same truck could cost thousands more one year compared to the last. Meanwhile, workers saw an opening. With automakers already bleeding from unsold inventory, strikes suddenly carried more weight than ever before. A 2-week walkout no longer just slowed production. It left lots overflowing with vehicles nobody wanted, while simultaneously piling millions in losses onto automakers' balance sheets. Unions, once considered relics, discovered leverage again. Demands for higher wages, better benefits, and stronger job security became harder for companies to ignore. And while Detroit stumbles, rivals abroad are sharpening their knives. Companies like BYD in China are producing pickups at costs American manufacturers can't touch. As low as $15,000 to build, while still profitable at $20,000 retail. Compare that with Detroit's bloated $30,000 production costs, and the gap is staggering. Once tariffs shift, foreign pickups could flood the US market, undercutting domestic brands in their own backyard. For American consumers, this could mean cheaper, more reliable trucks. For domestic automakers, it's an existential threat. Politics, strikes, and foreign rivals are converging into a perfect storm, and unless Detroit adapts, it risks losing not just profits, but the cultural dominance of the truck itself. The collapse of the $80,000 truck dream is bigger than sales charts, dealership discounts, or flashy headlines. It's a reckoning for an industry that relied too heavily on inflated prices, fragile technology, and the blind loyalty of its customers. For decades, automakers built an empire on trust, the trust that trucks were reliable, worth their soaring costs, and essential to American life. That empire is now cracking under its own weight. We've seen how scarcity turned to graveyards, how electric trucks failed to deliver on their lofty promises, and how luxury flagships became embarrassing liabilities. We've traced the betrayal of the Workhorse, with diesels and engines that once defined toughness now stranding their owners in repair shops. We've seen hybrids marketed as bridges to the future collapse under their own complexity, while mid-sized trucks carried the same poison in smaller packages. And we've watched orphaned models like the Nissan Titan leave buyers abandoned, stuck with machines no one else wants. But the fallout goes further. Families are suffocating under $1,200 payments in surprise repair bills. Dealers, once smug with confidence, now whisper about survival as each unsold truck drains $50 a day. Communities tied to auto jobs watch incomes shrink, while executives, who once bragged about endless growth, retreat into budget cuts and layoffs. Politicians have added chaos with shifting policies and tariffs. Unions are rediscovering leverage, and foreign rivals are preparing to storm the gates with trucks Americans can actually afford. And yet, in this collapse, there's a strange twist. For the first time in years, the power has shifted back to the buyer. Dealers are the ones begging, discounts are deeper than ever, and leverage sits in the hands of families who walk into showrooms with knowledge. If buyers demand written warranties, focus on trucks that have sat the longest, and aren't afraid to walk away, they can save thousands.
To knowledge, not fear, is the new advantage.
The industry's arrogance built this disaster, but their desperation may be what saves consumers money. The collapse is their nightmare, but it doesn't have to be yours. For buyers willing to see through the myths, this isn't just a downfall, it's a turning point. The only way to stay ahead is to stay informed, because the next chapter of this collapse is already on the horizon. And when it arrives, those who know the truth will be the ones who win. Once again, thanks for watching this video. If you got something out of this, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Agree, disagree, or something in between. I'd love to hear it.